My name is Kai Schwemmer. I go by Kai.Clips online. You can find me at cozy.tv/Kai.Clips, where I'm streaming right now. Not to say you should go away from,
All the
this
Nick
channel, because it's
Fuentes
very good
clones
stuff.
sound exactly the same, man. They all speak exactly the same. I don't know what it is. Yeah, he's from CozyTV. I knew I recognized the name. Let's see. Let me see if I can do an imitation of how they all sound.
Kaiklips, no spaces or dots or nothing.
Okay.
And I'm just a conservative, is what I would call myself.
And I'm just a conservative, as what I would call myself. I can't do it.
If you guys have anything you want to say to our friend Kai here, then jump on in. If not, then I can try to start things off.
Sure. Nice to meet you. So I only caught part of it. So I guess what is your opinion on the I guess criminal justice system? So what would
I think that if I were given the choice to choose, and I don't want this to sound uncouth or overly contrarian, but I think that when we're talking about criminal justice, I'm usually more worried about violence than I am about excessive force. So I think lots of the framing surrounding either police shootings or anything else should be contextualized first with criminality. And I think in 99% of cases, it can be explained away, or rather could have been prevented when criminality didn't occur. If we look at cases like, for instance, with George Floyd or with, Trayvon Martin or Ahmaud Arbery, many of these cases, I don't even think Ahmaud Arbery's case was specifically because of a history of violence. But coincidentally, when we look at any of these characters who have been put into the mainstream because of either police shootings or excessive use of force, almost every single time, coincidentally somehow, there is a history of violence or crime. And I think that the crime is more important to address than the excessive use of force.
So I think what we're looking at two different parts of the criminal justice system. So when I think about systemic racism, I think about how the criminal justice system functions with that. I'm not really thinking about George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery. What I think about are the four places in which you like the four steps in which somebody is when there's the cop citation, then there's the prosecutor charge, then the court starts, and then the judge sentences. And majority of the bias that you can see in the criminal justice system happens in the first two parts of that. So the cop citations or the police stops, and then the prosecutor charges. So you'll find that there's a lot of data to support that police stops are disproportionately done on people of color. And then you'll find that for prosecutor charges, that minorities in general may receive harsher punishments because prosecutors are more likely to apply mandatory minimums to them. So these are two places where you can look at like very, very specific cases of actual bias within the criminal justice system that would affect groups of color disproportionately.
Now, you also mentioned something really quickly, and just to kind of clarify, because I'm confused a little bit. So you mentioned you do not want to concentrate on excessive force. You're more concerned about violence. How is excessive force not a form of violence? Because a lot of these problems is in their studies to show it. I can find them for you and link them in the voice chat and link them in there. They're pretty clear that while I will say that there is a lot of evidence, the evidence of whether cops shoot black people more inconclusive, but the evidence that they brutalize minorities more is very clear. It's very clear. And so how is that not violence? When you have a group, cops using excessive force and brutalizing groups to like more so than other groups, that's to me seems like a systemic issue, is it not? It may not be because the cops are racist, but because of the way policing is handled in those communities and the policies in place, it leads to them being excessively violent towards these groups. How is that not violence? I want to see the disconnect here. I'm trying to close the gap.
Is that to Kai?
Yeah, sorry. My internet's already starting to stutter a little bit, so hopefully it doesn't get too bad. But I'd say
so 1 second. What region are you in? Maybe I can change the region in terms of Discord, and maybe that might be helpful to you. Like you in the West Coast, East Coast of the states, or Canada? I'm not sure where you're from.
Midwest, West Coast. I'm in Utah.
Okay, you're in West Coast. All right, that's I don't know, U.S. West. Okay, well, we could try something else later on if this doesn't work. Keep going.
Yeah, no worries at all. So, I'll kind of respond first to Wick. The thing you kind of started with, it's like this punchy kind of rhetorical, like politician line. It's like, well, if you're talking about the problem with violence, isn't police violence also violence? It's like, sure, but not all violence is the same. You know, there's a difference between the unjust taking of a life and the just taking of a life. And I'm not contextualizing it to say that all police killings are the, rightful taking of a life. I'm not saying that, but it is to say that the police violence, I would say 99% of the time, occurs after criminality. If the criminality vanished, there would likely be far less police violence and maybe even a statistically negligible portion. I'd like to see some of your statistics about brutalization of black people, but even then, I would be surprised if those statistics measured, brutality used on black people and controlled for how many of those instances began because there was a crime committed. Again, I am not defending the acts of certain police officers, but if you're going to, frame the conversation to be more concerned with the overuse of force, well, that use of force wouldn't have even occurred had there not been a reason to dispatch an officer, were there not like a report, and had a crime not been committed in most cases. Of course, with exceptions to the rule. But to start us, your point, if I can ask you about one thing, what's your take on mandatory minimums? What's your opinion of them, just generally?
I'm not sure. I know that they are disproportionately done on people of color and minorities, and that there's tons of studies, data to back it up, where African Americans are more likely to receive like 3-strike sentences than white people, and Latinos are more likely as well. I do think that there is an issue when we have this very clear like disparity, right? And it's not just in like one spot within the criminal justice system. A lot of people make the mistake of assuming that it happens like in sentencing, but we actually can look at sentencing and see that it's actually it tends to be it doesn't start there, right? If you look at sentencing alone, generally like it seems to be okay. It's where mandatory minimums come into place. That's where they're way more likely to apply mandatory minimum towards a person of color. And then similarly, when there's traffic stops are much more likely to be done for people of color in certain communities, just because of the communities that police tend to patrol, and I guess they just tend to stop people more. There's data even to show that let's see here. Even when let me see here. I have my thing here. Black drivers are 20% more likely to be pulled over than white drivers, even though they're less likely to possess contraband. This likelihood drops after dark when it's less easy to tell the race of a driver. So, I mean, there's like very concrete evidence that will back that up. So, yeah. I don't know if you have anything.
So yeah, I'm familiar with the after I forget what the study's called, but the night.
Here I can link it. I can link it. Yeah.
No, I'm familiar with it. I'm familiar with it.
Could you send me that study?
Yeah, I have 2 things actually I'm linking, and I will at you. Okay. Prime. Yeah.
Yeah, put it in VC chat. Okay. Please go ahead, Kai.
Yeah, so there's a few things. I mean, with the
Yeah.
nighttime study, it's an interesting one. I think, it's less a case of profiling and more just, people are being pulled over less, especially at night. And so obviously, proportionally, it's going to decrease too. That's kind of like this kind of one-off study. And I think, see, I don't know. I don't want to be like, I don't really like the study, but I think it's more important to kind of assess the I don't know what you'd call it, kind of like the thesis argument that you're making, which is like certain communities are over patrolled. And I do think that, black people are likely pulled over more and are likely frisked more and are stopped more because they live in communities that are over policed. Most of the time, though, the reason that communities are over policed is because there is a disproportionate level of violence. They did this in New York City. And when people were having the whole debate about the Bloomberg situation with stop and frisk, one of the things that actually was instrumental in decreasing the amount of crime was in creating crime heat maps. So they would figure out where most crime was happening, and they would have more officers patrolling these locations. These locations were largely, minority neighborhoods where the crime was being committed. I'm not making a claim as to whether it's because of them being poor or being minorities or whatever, but what's relevant is that crime is occurring. They are red hot on the crime heat map, and because of the heat of the crime, they have police dispatched to those locations. Now, do you see any problem with sending police to places where more crime is occurring? Because I think this is an effective way of
where
dealing
my
with
problem
it.
comes in.
No,
Where my
no.
problem, I'll just real quick.
Okay,
Well,
sorry.
Stardust and then Wick.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily have a problem with that. However, the study that I specifically cited shows that despite the fact that black drivers are less likely to possess contraband, they are 20% more likely to be pulled over. And you can look at stats from all over the country. 46% of the population of DC is black, but they represent 72% of stops.
Hosted with 894 viewers.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I just got rated. Thank you for the raid. I think I tagged you guys. There's a gap in search rates between black and white drivers. It's 2.4%, and then Hispanic and white drivers, it's 2.2%. Sure, there may very well be places where there is more crime and there needs to be more patrolling, but that doesn't account for the fact that black people were still less likely to possess contraband in that study that I was citing. So I also would say that it is not just one thing, right? There's the citation, which we are talking about right now, but also the prosecutor charges with a mandatory minimum. So, yeah.
Wick, do you want to go ahead?
Oh, sure. I mean, it's a little difficult. I think
Wick.
me and Stardust are coming at this from separate angles. We didn't get to any time to,
So sorry.
beforehand.
Hey, you and me both. You and me both. You don't
fine.
have me citing a bunch of studies, by the way, just because I didn't have my didn't pull up a folder.
It's all good.
Or
I understand. Though I did.
I'm a nerd. I'm
put my
sorry. I'm
sources-
so sorry.
Okay, I put my sources in the VC chat if you'd like to check them out. But we talk about this in you're so close to it. You're so close because yes, communities are policed more. There are.
I appreciate the raid, Mr. Girl. Thank you so much. I am in the middle of a debate right now, so yeah. But thank you.
These communities are done with more brutality, with more force, with more, disrespect, for lack of a better term. And we see this again and again and again. And it's creating this kind of cycle of animosity because then the communities don't trust the police, which creates bad interactions. And as you said, and as Stardust has mentioned, minorities get pulled over more. They interact with the police more. So just with that, it makes sense that even if there was no racism involved, because they're interacting with the police more, they're more likely to have a bad interaction. That's the law of numbers. That's the law of statistics. So we can look at these things. So when we talk about systemic racism, I think it's really important to understand that systemic racism doesn't require any of the actors to be actually racist, which is why it bothers me when people start saying, well, this guy was racist or this guy was racist. It doesn't matter. Everyone could be angels from heaven with not a racist bone in their body, but because the system is designed in a certain way, it disproportionately has negative effects on communities of color. And we can see this through statistics. We can see this through just a wide variety of data sources. And I've linked a few. I'm not an expert in this field by any means. So I think part of the problem when talking to people is they feel I'm accusing them of being racist. I'm not.
I get that. I get that.
But we have to recognize that there is a real problem that's disproportionately affecting these communities, because if we don't recognize the actual problems, then we can't fix them. And these policies, the war on drugs, for example, is a terrible policy that has disproportionately hurt Black people. The 1990s criminal bills that were passed disproportionately affected Black communities. And this is an issue that we have to it's a real issue. It's hard to kind of see the fact. Like I just don't see why you're not seeing it, if that makes sense. Because again, I'm not saying you're racist. You shouldn't feel guilty or anything. You didn't put these laws into place. But to acknowledge the fact, I don't see why that's a problem.
Yeah. So well, there's a few things to unpack there, and I promise, Stardust, I'll get to your point too. I'll kind of like bounce back and forth, and we'll open up different avenues of discussion. I think, you've kind of developed this kind of chicken and the egg thing, which is that, Stardust at least agrees. I don't know if you agree that these communities are being over-policed because there is a disproportionate level of crime. We talked about like the heat maps. By the way, the heat maps work. The heat maps decreased crime throughout New York.
Well, certainly, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be policed or.
Well, I understand that.
I stipulate to that. Fine, I'll stipulate.
Yeah. And then for you, it becomes, but then they have a lot of run-ins with police where there's brutality. Well, my argument is there's probably usually.
Thank you so much, Mr. 12-year-old Android girl, for the 12 gifted subs. Wow, thank you.
Who have had absolutely no crimes done against them, who are being brutalized by police. I'll be more sympathetic to that. But just to say that, these people are being, well, hold on. Okay. Just to say that these people are being searched and they haven't committed a crime is not saying that the people who are being searched are being brutalized and have committed no crime or have nothing on them.
Do you think because someone commits a crime, that they are not entitled to not being brutalized? Let's use that word. So
I think I answered this in my opening statement.
I may have missed it, so please again.
Yeah, I don't think they are, I don't think that is something they've earned is a violent treatment. I don't think the violent treatment of them is right. But if I'm tasked with either defending criminality or rather if I'm tasked with being angry at criminality or being angry at an excessive use of force, I'll be angry about the criminality, because when the criminality disappears, the necessity for the use of force disappears along with it. There is no.
Why is this an either or? Like, why can't you be like, man, crime sucks. I agree, crime sucks. And also, at the same time, say, and yet we shouldn't brutalize criminals.
Well, that is what I say. The problem is that
but you keep framing. No, you don't. You keep framing this as either or. I don't know if you intentionally do this, but you do.
No.
You frame this as either or. You like, if you task me with this or this, I'll choose to be angry at criminals every time. You just said that.
Absolutely.
Exactly. That's creating a binary. That's creating a false binary.
And I can explain my reasoning for that if you'll give me some ground trying to, impede into the conversation. Hey, no worries. I was honestly surprised. No insult to you, but you have more of an effeminate way of articulating. So I was surprised that you are conversationally
beard here?
You are conversationally so assertive. And there's a few ways that you kind of curb the assertiveness, which is like, passing the olive branch of, well, I don't think you're racist. I have this nuanced view of systemic racism, which, again, I understand that perspective. It's not my first day on the block around the systemic racism debate. I know for sure, like with a lot of like neocons or like the typical Republican, they'll assume you're calling them racist. I understand the nuance of the definition. But the reason I make it into this dichotomy is because that's really how it's framed. Every single time one of these cases gets pulled up, for instance, with the Jacob Blake shooting, the framing was, well, 7 bullets was too much for Jacob Blake. Well, the ultimate reality of every single time there is an excessive use of force with the, you know, with a criminal or whatnot, which again, I'm not saying they are deserving of excessive use of force, but every single time that happens, an absence of criminality would have completely made the excessive use of force an impossibility. And so that's the reason it's dichotomous, because it's not as much dichotomous as it is, it follows, right? The logic follows. Once there's criminality, there is the opportunity for the excessive use of force. It's not so much a dichotomy as it simply is the logical trend.
I get it. I get what you're saying. But again, we're excusing these things.
I just want to say,
oh, go ahead.
Yes, Wick, I think you are very manly. So I just want you to know that. Okay.
I appreciate that. I'm just me. It is what it is. I don't want to get sidetracked on that, but I do want to really point this out, because you're excusing, like, simply because, like, I'll give you maybe another example. I hope this isn't too off topic, but if someone comes up and slaps me, that doesn't mean I automatically have to slap back. I can make the choice to say, wow, that person violated my space. It did something bad to me. It hurt me in some way. I am not, like, it doesn't follow immediately that I am forced to respond with violence
response,
back.
To be honest, though. But go ahead.
Say one more time.
That's a pretty feminine response, but to be honest.
I slap somebody.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
we're really
I'm sorry,
getting off.
Wick,
We're getting off the rails here. I'm just saying that you do not have to respond with equal or excessive force. And in my belief, and this is just me here, I'm very much for harm reduction, to use the minimum amount of force necessary in any situation to keep things at an even keel. I understand that policing is a necessary thing, that we have to do it, but I think that we need to be minimizing the force used in as many situations as possible, because even though these criminals are breaking the law, they still are human beings. We believe in the Bill of Rights, right? We believe they have the right to various, I agree with all process, fair trial. So again, when that right is not being given to a specific group, that is a problem. And again, it has to do with the policies we have in place, the way we train our police officers, the fact that we don't use community policing as much as we should. There are steps we can take. There are steps right now that we can take to end the war on drugs, for example, is a really good one. I think maybe we could reach out and agree with that, to end the war on drugs. Maybe not, given your reaction. But there are steps we can take that will reduce the violence towards these groups. So why not take them? Where is the cost? Why oppose this?
Yeah, I think the kind of rhetorical characterization you set up of the issue is actually something that I would use. And I believe in kind of that force reduction or the harm reduction to some extent. The difference is that if you already have agreed that the opportunity for an excessive use of force follows criminality, then you are making a choice to assess or to care more about stopping an excessive use of force versus stopping the original, aggression, which is, of course, the slap. So if we stop people slapping, well, hold on a minute, though. Well, I disagree. I mean, we just mentioned the heat waves. Literally just being in communities that are more prone to violence is a deterrent to violence, because you look at police officers who are going to catch you who commit crimes. It was very effective in New York.
But again, and so, we agree that these over-policed communities, the crime is higher there. And
yes, because there's more police who find the crime. Yes.
If police stop crime, it would follow that would be lower, that the crime would go down. But it doesn't. In fact, we see the opposite occurring.
I am not at all surprised that when police are dispatched to places where we assume there is more crime, or where we have heard there is more crime, that there will be more reported incidents of criminality. I am not at all surprised that police are going to file reports that crimes are being committed in places where we have dispatched police to deal with crimes. It's not surprising whatsoever. What it's telling us is that we are effective in locking up people who have actually committed crimes. So again, just to get back to this chicken and the egg. What I'm trying to do is adequately punish people.
I would like to. So I actually would like to interject here, because I don't think that we are actually locking up people and giving them fair sentences. like I said, mandatory minimums are disproportionately applied towards people of color. Minorities in general receive harsher punishments than white people do because prosecutors are more likely to apply mandatory minimums to them. So even if we have these scenarios where, yes, the neighborhood has more crime, the neighborhood has, what you're talking about with the heat map, and therefore they have dispatched more police there, we still have the fact that regardless of that, we see that based on the statistics, that there is a disparity between black and white drivers and how much they're stopped, and this is taking into account with the neighborhoods, right? And then we still have the fact that there is a disparity in the harshness of the sentence that we see is given to a criminal of color. And the reason for that, again, is not because the judge is biased. It's not because of the court. It is specifically when the prosecutor brings the charges. They are far more likely to give a mandatory minimum.
Can you send me that source about the disparity in the sentencing? So there's a few variables that I want to see if they're in there.
Absolutely.
It's very difficult to do this kind of research. So if there's not those variables, obviously I'll be like, oh, I don't really like that the variables not included, but of course it's not totally damning. It's just very difficult to do the research,
Sure thing.
which I think a lot of people don't understand.
I will drop the links to you. Just give me a minute here, and then I guess you and Wick can continue your conversation.
Did you just call me weak, Wick? What's going on?
No problem. I'll keep monologuing for a bit. Again, I think, you guys accuse me of making this dichotomous, but everything I've ever heard from a leftist
you of anything. Damn.
No, not you. More so Wick. So you can accuse me of making this a dichotomous issue, but really,
I'm not accusing you. I'm observing. I'm pointing it out. That's all.
So what would you call the assessment of an observable thing? Be an accusation.
An observation.
Right?
That's what an observation is. You
Fair
observe
enough.
something, because if I just noted it, it wouldn't be an observation. Observing implies that I tell you that I make the observation.
Fair enough. Well, either way, you have observed me creating a dichotomy, and that is because, like I said, criminality and an excessive use of force are two steps, and the excessive use of force relies on the former criminality. So the interesting thing to me is that in every single conversation about criminality, about excessive use of force, about any kind of like the violence by police or the disparity in sentencing, the thing that people are more concerned about generally, and of course there are exceptions. There's kind of like proactive, like community policing and whatever. I kind of doubt the effectiveness of that. But the thing I always hear, and the framing and the rhetoric that I always hear is, well, people who have committed these crimes are getting mandatory minimums, or people who are, committing crimes are getting sentenced too long. And to me, again, I will always be more upset at the fact that the crime is committed than that somebody has received excessive justice. And I'm not even saying that out of like I believe that the justice
you could be more
that they
upset, and that's fine. But that
so why are
doesn't
you not?
change the fact. Why am I not more upset?
Even why are you not more upset about the crimes being committed than you are upset with the overuse of force?
Okay. So when it comes down to it, that we vote, we have an electoral system in this country, in America, and I have some say in what policies are put in place. I can vote on my sheriff in some instances. I have a say. I have the ability to affect it, even if it's minutely, because I'm simply one voice. So I have a say there. I have some level of control over that. Whereas someone committing a crime, I do not get to decide what they do. I have very little influence in what they do. So the sphere of influence I have, where I can control, is where I spend most of my issues and most of my time and energy, I should say, because that is what I can do. And yes, ideally, we would reduce crime, which would reduce excessive force. But because crime isn't going to go away anytime soon, so we can.
But the people who commit it can be locked up, and I think that's a big part of it. And
I am not
there's
an
epidemic of repeat offenders.
I'm not a prison abolitionist.
I didn't say you were. I'm just saying that it's effective to put people in jail who commit crimes. We see all kinds of
I'll give you an example.
recommittal.
I'll
I mean,
give you very
what-
specific.
the rates of
So just let me
re-entry
finish.
into
So,
prisons is
so
huge.
one second. We'll get back to you, Kai. We'll finish your point.
Okay,
then
sure.
back to Kai.
So you mentioned putting him in jail, locking him up. So we have a system in place where if you get a traffic ticket or a parking violation and a fine, and this is a real problem, and especially in poor communities, they can't pay it. They simply cannot afford to pay that. So they get more and more in debt. It becomes harder and harder to pay it. And eventually, they are sent to jail. This creates a a lot of animosity in a community towards policing.
All right, what's the first step? What's the first step?
What's the first step?
What was the thing that happened that created that cycle?
Again, society cannot control what people do, but they can't control how they respond to it. You are trying.
This is the problem.
This is silly. You're being silly.
No, I don't think
Stop
it's silly
being
at all. I'm
You're being
asking
silly,
for
you're missing the
responsibility
point,
from individuals.
And I
think
cannot tell if you are being dishonest or you really do not get it. I really cannot tell.
Well,
I'm trying to give you the benefit of the doubt here. I try to give you never ascribe to malice what can be ascribed to incompetence, but again, you keep harping on this point as if it invalidates the wrong done further down the line, which again, in an electoral system, we have more say over. Does that is it not getting through? Is it
no, it's getting through. I just think that you've shut yourself off from stopping the problem at its root.
How?
I'm about to explain. You'll find that I actually go to explain most of my points when I'm not cut off in the middle of them. But the way you've even characterized this, the way you've contextualized the idea of being able to, help things further down the line or being able to do something electorally, I mean, you've shut yourself off from the ability to stop crime preemptively or at least to ask for more responsibility. You are looking at the world and saying that, crime and these criminal acts are something that are a character of it. And while I believe that, man in his fallen nature is more prone to doing things which are wrong and is more prone to, certain negative outcomes, certainly he has autonomy. He can control himself. And maybe the answer is asking people to control themselves better or putting them in situations like we've illustrated with the heat maps in New York, where they are rather not going to commit crimes because they understand those crimes are going to be caught. Well, hold on.
Okay,
I'm not addressing your points yet because you started towing around the line of almost attributing either incompetence or, kind of malintent to me. So I want to kind of tell you, you have the opportunity electorally to argue for preemptive moves to stop crime. Sure. But you did not lead the conversation with, well, what if we propose heat maps? Or what if we actually, put more people who have committed crimes?
Hold on. That's not our point of disagreement. Okay.
No, but it is.
Kai, finish, please.
Yeah, it is our point of disagreement because you have never once started a conversation telling me what things we can do to reduce crime. All you've told me repeatedly is that, oh, you can't just make crime go away. Of course, but what we can do is make people who commit crimes repeatedly go away. We see so much recidivism with criminality, and making these people go to jail is obviously not my favorite outcome in the world. Jail's a very bad place, but it's absolutely something that would stop harm from being done. So if you're going to talk to me about, reducing the amount of force that's being used, the force that's infinitely worse than police brutality or the brutalization of people, which again, I don't believe is earned, is the force of, assaulting somebody in the first place, stealing somebody's car, or even, stopping somebody from, doing a parking violation.
Disagreed with that? When have I ever disagreed with that?
I think you don't even
When have I ever said that we cannot do things like heat map? You act as if we've had a lot of conversations before. This is our first time talking. We've been talking for about 20 minutes now. So yes, the fact that I haven't started with a point that we agree on, because this is a time and place to disagree. And so I've picked the point of disagreement. I think, yes, there are plenty of things we can do to reduce crime. And in fact, I would argue that reducing police brutality will reduce crime. Communities will be more likely to cooperate with police, and this will create a better way to actually do policing. Community policing works. When communities cooperate with the people who are policing them, it will have an effect of reducing crime.
Can you show me an example of that? And then I want to look at where the
I
example was taken.
I don't have it out of my pocket, my friend. I don't have
If you can find one, that would be useful. Because what I would also assume is that the example of communities coming together to help police themselves is usually done in very high trust communities where crime happens not to be a systemic issue. And I'm not attaching a race or an identity to any of that. I'm simply saying it's probably a suburban area, which is relatively economically well off, that happens to be able to police itself very well. The reason for that is because there's a lot of preemptive things. There's a sense of responsibility in these communities. There is a sense of caring about the people you're around. There's not a culture of violence in these communities, and certainly the people who are in these hold on. Certainly the people in these communities are not committing crimes to perpetuate a cycle of poverty. When we're talking about the entire conversation of
his take was so bad the internet killed it.
Apparently. Let's give him a moment.
Okay.
He said he was having
federal prosecutors are twice as likely to charge African Americans with offenses that carry a mandatory minimum sentence than similarly situated whites.
He's back.
Yeah, I'm back. That sucked. I was literally just going off, and then the internet had to nerf me. But do you mind sending me that study? I want to look over the methodology of it.
Sure. It's in the I think I tagged you in where it is in VC chat.
Can I also just say that chat, your comments are funny. I like the comments here. Keep them coming.
Yeah.
Here's another one. I'll drop for you.
Well, which one do you want me to look at first? Because we can do them one by one.
The first one.
Okay, and that's the 5harad.com one, right?
Guys, if you want to, if you guys are curious about the studies,
that's from earlier.
They're in VC chat in our Discord server. So !Discord and chat. I'll do that myself in a second.
Oh, is it nature.com?
That's where you'll find
it.
No.
So when we were talking earlier, I talked about how there are two places within the there are 4 steps in the system, right? And there's the cop citation or the even the police stop, right?
I just need to know which one it is. Is it ResearchGate or Sentencing Project?
So ResearchGate, yeah. People of color experience discrimination. Where is it? Federal prosecutors, for example, are twice as likely to charge African Americans with offenses that carry a mandatory minimum sentence than similarly situated whites. And that's what is from the ResearchGate link.
I need to see if I can actually pull up this study. If not, you may just need to screen share it because I have to go through my university to get access to it. But I might. I might have access to it, so I'll let you know in just a second.
Okay.
Sorry, I know everybody hates
How long have you been engaging with this topic, by the way? I just don't feel that you're very up on a lot of the data. Like, I haven't heard any sources from you.
Well, like I said, and you actually were very keen to say, oh, no, I totally understand that, you only found out you were doing this topic, today. I don't have a research doc. I don't have the Vosh doc.
I understand, but certainly you have.
I have my own doc that I used for a previous debate. So
maybe even a video essay, something. Just because it seems like you're pulling shit out of your ass. Like
true.
The stuff that I have pulled up is research I did like a couple of months ago.
I think he's talking about me. Okay. So the first thing.
No, Stardust. This wasn't towards you, Adil. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. At the beginning, when I wasn't pressing you too hard, I said, well, I don't have like a big doc or anything because I haven't made a doc about this. I've engaged with the issues and I've heard stuff and I've come up with issues. So I'm doing what I can given the resources I have, which is looking at the studies that you or Stardust has come up with, poking holes either within the rhetoric of it, with the understanding of it, or asking questions about maybe we can assess the existence of crime a little bit differently. Maybe responsibility and order prevents the crime from happening in the first place more than us talking about how we can minimize harm after the crime has been committed. So I'm trying to attack this stuff, and I think everything I've been saying is actually important.
Chat, this is my doc. This is my fucking doc, okay? Look at my fucking doc here, all right? I don't fucking joke around, chat, okay? Don't fuck with me. Sorry.
bar because I need something other than Twitter talking points here. I need something to engage with. Because you
gave you the heat map example.
The heat map example. I'm like, okay, cool, heat map example.
So do you agree with
that doesn't address what is being talked about here? You are.
That was from my Sean Last debate. That was the studying I did for my Sean Last debate, and I got fucking creamed for that one. I'm not getting creamed for this one.
This is very dishonest. You aren't engaging with this topic at all. You just aren't.
Okay, Wick,
you aren't
what
providing
you said is blatantly dishonest, Wick, this is a blatantly dishonest thing.
You know this is recorded, right? People can go back and watch it.
It's funny because you are now saying exactly what I said to you, which is that I don't hear you ever speak up about any of the harm minimization that comes from actually reducing criminality, which is why your
phrase,
earlier. Which was very no. And what you said when you addressed it, what you said was, well,
this is
you're not going to get rid of crime.
I addressed you,
and
sir.
if you address
guys, I'm tired of the dick swinging contest. I can't compete with a dick swinging contest because I don't have one. Okay, so. Let's take a step back.
And I've already won, so let's go. Kai, please finish your point, and then I'd love to hear from Wick.
I don't even know if I want to interact with it because I do think it's a little bit bad faith. I didn't come at this saying that there's only one way to look at it. I actually came at it asking, why do you only look at this issue one way? Why is every single time I hear this topic talked about, it's always what we can do after a crime has been committed? And so I have given certain solutions. I am open to talking about mandatory minimums. The reason I brought this up to begin with, Stardust, is from the research and from my time in the field, just listening to people talk and engaging with the conversation. Wick, you'll be so happy to know that I understand, if I'm not mistaken, that mandatory minimums were actually pushed for by minorities, by Black people. There was a large community of Black people who were pushing for it as a way of holding whites responsible when they would often be able to, get off of crime scotch-free. Now that mandatory minimums have been used, or rather have been disproportionately seeing effect on Black people, it's a big problem, which again comes to it, well, is the problem the, overuse of mandatory minimums, or is it the fact that the crime that warranted the mandatory minimum was committed in the first place?
Right.
And
so
again,
if you look at this, if you look at it, it's they look at the similar crimes, and even for similar crimes, it's far more likely that a minority will get a mandatory minimum applied to them. And even if that is the case, that it was a minority group that proposed mandatory minimums, that doesn't mean that we don't revise these things when we find out that they actually have a disproportionate effect on a group, regardless. Because when that one group is, I'm sorry, I just got a donation. When that one group, fucking chat, dude. When that one group is disproportionately affected and they are suffering, then that leads to generations after them growing up without people in their home, and it leads to generations after them being affected by the availability of jobs, the ability to vote, right? Feeling more disenfranchised, and as a result, all of us suffer because of that. So I think that there is something that we can do here with the mandatory minimums, especially if they're being disproportionately applied towards minorities.
So we have a situation where, again, we have data on this, and we can look at the data. And as Stardust so aptly put, there's data on how the laws are enforced that disproportionately hurts minorities. There's data on how policing is done, which disproportionately hurts minorities. There's data on the use of force when criminality happens that hurts minorities. And again, all these data points cannot simply be waved away by saying, but what about crime? Yes, crime should be reduced too. There are ways we can do that. But when we make the justice system more equal,
one of those ways is that if the mandatory minimums are not disproportionately applied towards minorities, this means that there are more minority households with two parents in the house. And what's always better for a house than one parent is two parents. So.
Well, it's also better for a household if the father doesn't commit crime.
You said, sorry, I'm a little confused, and maybe I missed that part. Stardust, you said mandatory minimums are disproportionately applied to
minorities.
Minorities? But mandatory minimums are the mandatory minimum.
Prosecutors are far more likely. This is what I've cited. I actually tagged you in it, Prime. Research suggests that minorities may receive harsher punishments than whites, in part because prosecutors may be more likely to apply mandatory minimums to minorities. And studied in California, 3 strikes law sentencing found that African Americans were more likely to receive 3 strike sentences than eligible whites, and that Latinos defendants were more likely to receive 3 strike sentences in counties with larger Latino populations.
There's a few things here.
What she's saying is when prosecutors bring a charge.
Prime, I don't know how, Prime, I've been talking about this for the past 30 fucking minutes. I don't know, like, I'm not trying to.
No. Calm down. Calm down. I'm a little confused because mandatory minimums are mandatory, right? And so if you're. So
let me come halfway. Can I come halfway?
No. Hold on. I'm a little confused because and I don't want to be very clear with what you're saying. I read this before, right? But like, is what this is saying is that they are choosing to charge them with crimes with mandatory minimums, or
no?
No.
Okay. Or
can I come in? My understanding of this.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Or is it saying that they can choose to apply a mandatory minimum, which would not be a mandatory minimum then? Kai, do you have an answer to that? Or
yes, yeah. So my understanding of it is that there's a recommendation of a certain punishment, right? So if you don't put something forward, like the way you would say you prosecute somebody or you're charging them with first-degree murder, second-degree, or whatever, you can choose what you're charging them with. So if you don't charge them with something, this is the way I understand it. I may be wrong. So Stardust, you seem more literate on it. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
That's what I said.
The prosecutors basically have the choice of waging that like an eligible mandatory minimum crime. Yeah. So if they don't charge him with that, though, then the mandatory minimum just doesn't get used.
So that's why I just want to be very clear as to what you're saying.
Sure.
If it's rather than like another crime that doesn't have a mandatory minimum, if that's what you're talking about, then that makes sense. But
yes.
The way this is worded, it sounds like if first-degree murder, for example, has a mandatory minimum, it sounds like the prosecutor can or cannot have that on.
No, they're more likely to they're more likely to charge with offenses that carry a mandatory minimum sentence. So yeah.
Okay.
Then similarly situated whites. That is the important part of that. Then similarly situated whites.
And yeah, so I am not able to access the doc because I don't have credentials for the research paper.
I think Sci-Hub is a good. Let me see if I can get it on Sci-Hub.
If you can find one from anything other than ResearchGate, I should be able to pull it up. The big thing for me and the reason and Wick just to.
Thank you for the 100 tier 1 subs, Mr. 12-year-old Android girl. Holy shit, you're based as fuck.
By just saying that, black people are disproportionately charged with mandatory minimums or serve, sentencing disparities, that alone is not an argument because there are so many things that go into what kind of charge is being brought up against somebody, the way the crime is committed, the brutality in which the crime is committed, whether the crime was planned. All of these things have an effect on whether. Well, hold on, Wick. So whether or all of these things have an effect on the kind of punishment or the kind of crime that somebody is being charged with, which is why with a lot of the disparity research, they don't control for the variables either of repeat offense or of the severity of the crime or any of these things, which is why a lot of the research can frankly just be thrown out. Because if you're not taking that into account, none of the research goes adequately far enough in examining why the disparity might exist, because all of those reasons are reason enough for a disparity.
So when we do studies and when we talk about these things, there are obviously no study is ever. You should never take any study as set in stone because science is always changing. We are always getting new data. We're always getting new statistics in. Things change, and I understand that. But when we've cited not just that study, but multiple studies showing this discrimination happening in multiple different ways, not just mandatory minimums, and you keep sticking to this one thing as if it's the only thing, and you again not even addressing the data because you have admitted you cannot see the data that is given, but you're just saying, well, it might be wrong because they might be doing this and it might be in this way, but I can't tell you because I can't see the data. So I'm just gonna, I'm gonna cast some shade and cast some doubt. It's kind of effective rhetorically to a certain crowd, but it doesn't fly in any kind of space outside of fucking Twitch. So I just want to make that fucking clear here that this is silly. It's silly season right now.
Wick,
it's
Wick,
silly
I
season right
actually
now.
agree.
You have no fucking credentials.
No, Wick, I
data
agree.
that you're
I
kind of
tagged
going
you.
with here. I don't know.
Yeah,
This is silly. I don't know. I don't know why
I understand what you're
doing
saying.
here? This
I
is
understand what
crazy.
you're saying, and I think it's absolutely ludicrous. You are saying that I'm doing something wrong by saying, "Hey, I can't."
Not wrong.
Well, hold on,
Not
Wick,
doing something
just
wrong.
let me.
It's okay to be wrong.
Let him
It's
finish.
o-
Let him finish.
It's okay to be
look,
wrong.
It's his turn.
No.
It's his turn. Kai.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You're saying that I'm doing something wrong. Not that I am, wrong. I mean, you believe that too, but you're saying I'm doing something wrong or that I'm obfuscating or hiding something or not engaging with the evidence just because what? I'm sticking to one argument that we've brought up so that we can hash it out because I have yet to validate the evidence or not.
I'm sticking to one argument that we have brought up because I've yet to validate the evidence.
And I say, well, without validating the methodology of the study, I can't quite agree with you that it explains what you're saying it does. And you're saying, oh, no, that's so stupid. Just take take what I'm saying at face value.
No, that's so stupid. Just take what I say at face value.
Says.
Unreasonable.
It's about the way that the study is done. And if I can't verify how the study is
I just
done,
linked it to
I'll
you.
want to see how the study is done before I agree to your point. But you're getting upset just because I'm asking to see how the study is done.
It is equally unreasonable to disbelieve something immediately without being able to verify
I didn't. Okay.
As it would be. Let me
made an
fucking
assessment.
finish.
Guys, we can settle this right now. I linked it.
Please.
I linked it.
But we know what he's going to do. I mean, this is what happens. Is he goes through it, he finds one thing that to someone who doesn't do research or doesn't do data, he'll cherry pick one portion of the thing and not realize that in analysis like this, they take metadata. So they take sources from a lot of different areas and they compile it and they present their findings in the abstract. That's what it's for. So.
Oh, yeah, Kai, I do see that. The study that she linked.
Yeah, so I'm looking here. I need to get down to the methodology here. So
Yeah, I'm scrolling too. I'm like,
yeah. And again, I think anybody who's good faith in the audience is not going to have a problem with me. I'm not accepting the evidence. I'm not dispelling it. I'm just saying I would need to see the methodology before I can agree or disagree with it. That's all I've said. That's not wrong.
That's what you have said.
Before I can agree or disagree with it, that's all I've said. I'm not wrong.
I cannot validate this. This is what
I did not
These
say
are the words
that.
You know this is recorded, right?
Yeah, look,
Okay,
if you're
you can go
telling
back
me
and look.
that I won't agree to something, I won't agree to something until I've seen it, is that the problem?
Oh, there's a data methods the methods, section.
All right. Okay, so charging sample consists of U.S. mail or of male U.S. citizens with U.S.MS arrest records and U.S. attorney files opened in the 2007 to 2009 fiscal years. What I'm looking for basically is if they calculate or if they control for a severity of offense, if they control for prior infractions or prior criminality, or any of these things when they're taking the stats into account. Because if they don't, then these variables likely explain away any of the disparities that we're talking about.
Let's see here.
So let's see. Wait.
I got.
Okay, so it had. Well, I got to keep reading. Hold on, I won't jump on it yet.
Okay, so I'll entertain the audience.
But not entirely explained by characteristics fixed prior to charging.
Yeah. So everyone, what's happening right now?
With the same prior records. Here it is. The study provides robust evidence that black male federal defendants receive longer sentences than whites arrested for the same offenses with the same prior records. On average, black males receive sentences that are approximately 10% longer than comparable white males, with those at the top of the sentencing distribution facing even larger disparities.
All right. Do they control for the severity of the crime?
for the same offenses with the same prior records.
Well, the same
So,
offense could be
it
the
does talk
same,
about
like
criminal
it could be
history.
murder, right? So
Okay, on page 45.
It's yes. The answer is
Page
yes.
45,
It is the same
they
severity.
talk about how they construct their key independent variables such as race, arrest offense, and criminal history. So they do take into account criminal history and the
Which is
arrest
good.
offense. Yes.
which is good. So let's see.
Charge severity measures are also taken into account.
Oh,
Here, hold on.
Can we just trust that my study, like we just went through it?
Again, he
Yeah, I
isn't.
just need to
he
read it.
isn't
Just give me a
coming
second to read it.
actually-
Give me a
I'm
break.
isn't
helping
coming to
you
actually
read
engage
it.
with you.
I'm helping you read it. I'm
He
helping
isn't
No,
you.
going to
I
actually
appreciate that.
engage with you.
It's
He's
just-
looking
I
to
don't
poke
think I've
holes.
done. I don't
He's
think I've done
looking to,
anything wrong. I'm just trying to read the study. Wick.
I get it. I get
You
it. I
sound
get
very
it.
conspiratorial.
I
Wick.
get
You're
it, but you
trying
know-
to-
I am
intention to me.
repeating back to you what you have said. You are here to
Yeah.
poke holes in this data. You have said that
I mean,
on this stream.
and one part of it says that the source does not records up to that the severity of these charges aren't properly recorded in the AOUSC data sources, which is what they're using. So it's not properly recorded except for misdemeanor distinctions. So just the source itself doesn't necessarily have that, but it depends. Yeah, so like that might be included for some and not included for
It
others.
says the same offenses, the same prior records.
It says, I mean, it says AOC, AOUSC records up to 5 charges at the filing stage and 5 at the termination stage. However, the AOUSC data do not reliably code the severity, and he put it in italics, of those charges beyond the felony misdemeanor distinction. Instead,
Wait.
charges
Okay.
simply.
Wait, no.
Can you give
That's
us the page
huge.
here?
No, hold on.
The
hold on.
felony
Whoa, 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 whoa.
misdemeanor
Read that-
distinction?
No, read that one more time. Read that one more time. I want to make sure I heard that right.
Sure. The AOUSC data do not reliably code the severity of these charges beyond the felony misdemeanor distinction, right? So it'll tell you if it's a felony or if it's a misdemeanor, but like
It won't
maybe
tell you
not
what
the
degree of felony.
Right, but it's
instead
a
charges-
minor,
no, that is
right?
This is what it
huge
actually
flaw.
says. It says, however, because we are focused on the severity of charging, not subsequent sentencing fact-finding, we prefer a metric that, while guidelines-based, was premised only on what the prosecutor actually charged, the elements of the crime. So they did take that into account. Not perfectly, as Prime mentioned, because there is a difference between misdemeanors and felonies.
Severity doesn't even play into mandatory, right? So
Yeah. It says that we therefore develop, calculate, and apply several new severity measures to map the initial charges and their combinations into. This is, if you want to read this yourself, this is on page 9. Kai, if you look on that PDF, page 9.
Well,
And this is the thing.
I wanted to
The
get
point
through
out-
like the
I
part
just want to
you were
explain to the
mentioning
audience real quick.
before.
I just want to, while everyone's reading, I just want to explain to the audience this kind of rhetorical trick. They jump on one thing and they take it in isolation. They say, "Aha, we got him. This is the thing that disproves the data," without
Yeah.
taking the whole thing to effect. And I understand
Severity
it's
doesn't-
hard to take in
and
everything
severity
to effect
is not
right
even
now.
a criteria for mandatory
Exactly.
sentencing.
Indeed, yes.
It's
And
3
so, again,
crimes equal
don't fall for these
sentence.
tricks, gang. Don't fall for these tricks because that's what they are. They're tricks.
I have a whole fucking doc, okay?
done
I
this
will
several
screen
times.
share
Okay.
my fucking doc with you.
No,
I was
it's
debating
okay.
Sean last, okay? And I got
Actually,
fucking
can I see it? I did
you
see
are.
the Sean last debate. That was
That was horrible. It was horrible. I hated it. Okay.
It was an
yeah.
interesting debate.
I
but
was
what
I was a baby back then, but
What
here.
I want to do, I want to.
This is my racisms
graph.
graph, okay?
Chat soliloquy.
I screen shared it to you guys.
Is Wick is going to go off about, like, this is the rhetorical tactic. Let me tell you Wick's rhetorical tactic. His rhetorical tactic is trying to emulate Destiny and not doing it so well, which is why you get into the whole bickering and you get into the, you're being bad faith, you're so stupid, do you spend any time at this at all? And to the audience, it looks very fake because he employed this tactic after me questioning maybe the way he approached the conversation or the issue itself. So it seems very fake to the audience, but it's even more fake when at the end he says, "Oh, well, I had a really fun time talking to you." It's like, dude, look, either accuse me of dishonesty or don't. So
He's
that's
gone.
the rhetorical
Kai,
tactic there.
please look at my document, okay? Now, please never fucking doubt me again about me doing my own fucking research, okay? Thank you.
This is very autistic.
It is, yeah, isn't it? But I'm not autistic.
I don't even mean that in a negative way. Being autistic's kind of awesome, but now it's like a flowchart. Flowchart doc is the new meta, I suppose.
Yeah,
But hey,
yeah.
what's going on, Dustin? How are you?
Wow. Okay. Don't even acknowledge. Oh, Stardust, your study is actually pretty good. Thank you.
I just saw bubbles. I didn't see any of the studies. Again, you know, I've read lots of studies.
I linked the study to you. I was the one who gave it to you, Kai. How much are you going to deny me my oh my god.
That study was pretty good.
Oh my god. I gave it to you.
It's never
I gave
enough.
it to you. It's linked in here. It's linked in here. It's linked in my
good.
document, dude.
I know,
It's linked in my
I
document.
said that the study was
I'm going
pretty good.
I'm
You
so
can't ever
sad.
say enough to
I am
please
so
these
sad.
people.
Yeah,
never
you
make them
can't.
happy
You can't
enough.
because I'm a
It's
woman,
always
okay?
give me
And
more,
nothing's
give me
ever
more,
enough for me,
give me more,
okay?
give me more,
Nothing's
give me
ever
more
enough for
compliments.
me,
I want
okay?
more compliments. Feed them to me. You know?
Jeez,
It's like
dude.
Valentine's Day candy.
Unbelievable.
Help me figure out what do you mean by this study is pretty good. Like, can you help me? What does that
I
mean
linked
to
it.
you?
Here, I'll tag you.
So within the conversation.
Sorry, Dustin, have you been keeping track of been watching the stream?
Yeah, no, I've been watching the stream. I want.
Okay.
Yeah. Help
Yeah.
me
Okay.
Figure out what
Okay. Sure.
Here, Dustin, I'll
so-
link it
Go ahead.
directly to you, okay? From my document, okay? Directly to you, okay? God forbid, okay?
So to me, what it means that the study is pretty good. It's within what I've seen from systemic racism studies. So the things that I've started looking for when you see the studies or when I look through the studies are typically a variety of controls that they give, because I think a lot of studies I've read don't provide those controls. So the controls I look for, to be honest, I haven't engaged a ton with the mandatory minimums one, and mandatory minimums aren't something I've explored particularly. But with most of like the sentencing disparity research I've seen, a lot of it doesn't control for offense severity or whether there's priors or a variety of, you know, different variables like that. So when I say it's good, it's that they acknowledge that there's kind of a disparity, or rather that they don't control for anything past, you know, misdemeanor and felony, but then they try and create more controls themselves, which I had a very rudimentary look at it. But the fact that they went through the effort of doing that rather than just saying, well, we don't really control for more than, you know, misdemeanor versus felony, I think was, you know, very good faith of the creators of the study.
Okay, so now I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it shows about a 10% disparity in sentencing as a whole. Was that?
That would be to Stardust, not to me. I don't know the study as well as she does.
Would that
Yes.
that would be correct?
Yes.
All right, so help me define that. I imagine, is 10% going to be enough for you to agree to a systemic racism in this particular setting on these particular studies?
Out of not being very like flippant about my position, I'd say it's probably not enough to convince me, but it's evidence that I would say points in that direction generally.
Okay, yeah. So, fucking, geez, man, it's an incredibly complicated subject. Like, what else would you want to see? Or like, where are differences? How can I get that other, like, you know, what else would you want to see where we can keep going down that line?
Well, also here, actually, let me just turn you up. You're a little bit quiet.
Sorry.
Are you using your right mic? Or are you close?
Yeah.
Try it again.
There we
no,
go.
you're good.
Perfect. That's a little bit better. The
Okay,
chat was
yeah,
just like,
perfect.
can't hear this guy. Yeah. So I mean, there's a few things I'd have to do. Honestly, for me, it would have to be more counter research. I think that's the way that you should look into things. Engaging with a lot of evidence from one side, to me, is never the best way of going about it. Part of what I would need to convince me is doing more statistical research myself, so I can become more fluent in reading methodologies and in understanding the statistical significance of that 10%, which is why I'm not quite ready to say that, you know, the 10% is like a really big deal or what it can be attributed to. Part of it is just I'm not super fluent in statistics. But yeah, to kind of win me over, it's, I don't know. I think a large part of it, because I'm already seeding, I don't have a research doc, has to be about the rhetoric. I think I would have to see a competent rhetorical attack of criminality as the necessary first mover, if that makes any sense.
It doesn't. Can you help me? Can you help me?
Yeah,
out a
so,
little bit? I joined the Marine Corps. I didn't join the Air Force. So
no worries.
Barney
So,
style as much as you can.
the part we were talking about a little bit earlier was how it's kind of a chicken and an egg. And Wick tried to say it's like a dichotomy I'm striking up between, you know, the harm either of excessive force or the harm of original crime. But I kept saying, and what I think is more important is that original crime, if that disappears or if that is reduced, takes away the opportunity, or rather drastically reduces how many times excessive force is used.
Okay, yeah, no, and I don't think a lot of people are going to disagree with that idea because fundamentally, what I had written down earlier is, let me see here. I'm sorry, I took a lot of notes. The elimination of crime would, of course, stop police interactions between police and citizens. Correct?
Well, yes, and of course, I'm not saying that we can totally eliminate crime.
Right. Of
I just
course.
think, yeah, I think a lot of the well, if I could just sum it up rhetorically, I'm more
Yeah.
concerned about the problem of mass criminality than I am with mass incarceration, and I'm more concerned with original crime than an excessive use of force in stopping that crime.
Yeah, man. I don't think we disagree on that part either. The problem that I'm having is what and how, and I think Stardust and I are trying to take a look at this, is like how society and typically, in a sense, I would say legislation can help address these problems, right? So you brought up heat maps, which I think was a pretty awesome thing as far as like an assistant tool in policing, right? Well, in part of that heat map discussion, I believe kind of ended up coming like something along the lines of broken windows policing. Did you ever hear about that?
I've heard that said way
Yeah.
more, and I should definitely know what it is with how many times I've heard that said, but I
Okay.
couldn't like define it.
Yeah. Basically, it'll be a kind of like a definition for as a society, if you're in a worse off neighborhood, typically you're going to have more opportunity to commit those crimes, right? So I think, at least, maybe I shouldn't include Stardust in this one, but at least on my side, what I would want to see is a responsibility as a community, as a country, to come together and start investing in those communities so you have more opportunity and a less kind of draw or incentive to do criminal behavior. Do you think that that would be something that would help you kind of address what you would say is like, or kind of go towards what critical race theory may be if we can agree upon like these neighborhoods are kind of blighted areas, they are pretty problematic?
Yeah, there's a few nuances to it. I don't want to bring critical race theory into it too much, unless we get into like the anti-white portion. But even then, I wouldn't really cite CRT very much because I don't like talking about it. I find it a rather boring subject.
Sorry, I got confused because that was like
no
the
worries.
subject of the panel. Yeah.
Oh, no worries.
Okay. Yeah. No.
Wait, is the panel like
No.
subject CRT?
So
Yeah.
I just put that on the screen because
You
people love-
editorialized.
I-
you
I'll put
bastard.
anything on the screen to get people in.
Yeah,
But
dude,
like
right.
it's systemic racism, so which I said in the
Okay.
beginning. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, what I would say is I think there's a reason that these places are impoverished. And I think the one thing you can do to totally ruin or to really act as a detriment to your future prospects and to your happiness or your opportunity later in life is to commit crime. And I think, again, if we're talking about the chicken and the egg, it makes sense that the crime comes first. I think if there are people who commit crimes and they end up in jail and then they come back out of jail, obviously they have fewer resources and whatnot. Right. But I think that the initial crime is what causes the impoverished circumstance. It might be a repeating cycle, but the beginning is always the criminality. So even if you go into a community and you make it, a little bit richer, if you restore Chicago, eventually, if people continue doing things that destroy their opportunity, if they keep making choices that make it difficult for them to prosper and to pass down wealth, that's really largely their own fault.
Well, yeah, of course. But the question that I'm trying to dig at is like, how do we address those issues, right? I don't think most people
Yeah, of course.
inherently want to be arrested, right? I think that most people, and we kind of see this in the drug business as far as like marijuana goes, you see that most people want to end up doing it legally. A great example of how the state fails at it is how they end up doing the legalization process. You can look at California's weed legalization and the problems that it's having for those small business opportunities that are actually very detrimental. So you're actually having an expansion of weed crime and everything kind of that goes along with that. So,
Yeah, I was going to say that because of the research I've done about marijuana, everything that I find is like there's crime that's up around distilleries, like even legal ones, and that, I mean, to me, it kind of makes sense that there's either, you know, somebody, you know, a guy, you have a dealer, and that guy's always going to, you know, give you like the friends and family benefit or whatnot. I haven't seen weed legalization give too many positive impacts. I also am just against, you know, marijuana in general because I think it makes you retarded. And I do have a study for that in case Wick is here.
Well, yeah, but my point that I'm trying to address is more.
So quickly. Sorry,
yeah, I'm gonna get going. Nice to meet you guys. Kai, I would love to like have a talk one-on-one sometime if you're open to it. Yep, I'll see you guys later. Have a good one.
Sure thing. Have a good one.
I had to leave, man. I had to leave, man. Ugh.